Happy Friday, everyone, and welcome to Firstpost America. We're live in the nation's capital of Washington, D.C., and over the next few minutes, we'll take you from the United States and around the world, covering all the top stories of the day. Before that, here's a look at the latest headlines. President Donald Trump heads to Scotland for a 4-day visit, his first trip to the U.K. since returning to office in January. He's expected to visit 2 of his golf resorts and also meet British Prime Minister Keir Starmer. The Kremlin says a meeting between Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky and Russian President Vladimir Putin is unlikely within 30 days after Kyiv proposed a leaders' summit before the end of August. Britain and Australia say they will sign a 50-year commitment to their nuclear-powered submarine pact with the United States, seeking to bolster a deal that Washington has now thrown into doubt. France releases and deports one of its longest-held inmates, pro-Palestinian Lebanese militant Jorge Ibrahim Abdallah, after more than 40 years behind bars for the killing of 2 diplomats. And a Russian rocket puts an Iranian communications satellite into space, the latest achievement for an aerospace program that's long been concerning for Western governments. We begin today with a rare face-to-face between President Donald Trump and Federal Reserve Chair Jerome Powell. Wearing hard hats and standing shoulder to shoulder, the president and Powell bickered in public over the escalating cost of renovations to the Fed's headquarters in Washington. The president claimed the bill had risen from $2.7 billion to $3.1 billion, accusing the U.S. Central Bank of cost overruns, a claim Powell immediately disputed. Take a look.
So we're taking a look, and it looks like it's about 3.1 billion. It went up a little bit, or a lot. So the 2.7 is now 3.1.
I'm not aware of that.
Yeah, it just came out.
Yeah, I haven't heard that from anybody at the Fed.
Yeah, it just came out.
Our notes had it about 3.1 as well.
3.1,
3.2. This came from us?
Yes. I don't know who does that.
The Federal Reserve Chair clarified that the figure President Trump referenced included costs from a 3rd building, one that was completed 5 years ago. Powell then added that he didn't expect any further cost overruns, but added the Fed had reserves to handle them if in fact they did.
You're including the Martin renovation. You just added.
That's our entire capital plan.
Yeah, you just added in a 3rd building. Is what that is. That's a 3rd building.
Well, no,
the
but
Martin building.
it's a building that's being built.
No, it was built 5 years ago. We finished Martin 5 years ago.
It's part of the overall work.
But it's
So,
not new.
So we're going to take a look. We're going to see what's happening, and it's got a long way. Do you expect any more additional cost overruns?
Don't expect them. We're ready for them.
Former Presidents Franklin Delano Roosevelt, Gerald Ford, and George W. Bush all made visits to the Fed during their respective tenures. But such visits remain rare, even though the Fed headquarters are just only a few blocks away from the White House. Trump's visit comes amid months of criticism directed at Powell, mostly over his refusal to cut interest rates. Now, this after he slashed borrowing costs 3 times last year while former President Joe Biden was still in office. And the president has also threatened to fire the Fed chief over what he calls outrageous cost overruns in the renovations. Reports put the cost of the project at around $2.5 billion after an initial estimate of $1.9 billion back in 2021. A large portion of that is being spent on security, including blast-resistant windows and structural reinforcements to protect against explosions. Still, the cost of renovations have clearly caught the president's attention. And when asked what he would do with a project manager whose costs ballooned this way, the president said, "I'd fire him." But when pressed by reporters on whether the Fed chair should be fired for this, the president stepped back, saying he wouldn't go that far. Listen in.
Look, I would love to see it completed. I don't want to put that in this category. It's a very complex thing that could have been made simpler.
Now, the public sparring between the president and the Federal Reserve Chair remains highly unusual and highlights the tense relationship between the White House and America's central bank. During his visit, President Trump reiterated that he expected the Federal Reserve to trim interest rates at their meeting next week.
I'd love him to lower interest rates, but other than that, what can I tell you? The country is doing really well. I just briefed the chairman on the deal we made with Japan.
However, Powell and other officials have reportedly signaled they will likely keep their rate unchanged. Still, economists and Wall Street investors expect the Fed may start actually cutting rates in September. Meanwhile, experts have questioned whether the president even has the authority to fire Powell, who was originally nominated to the role back in 2017 during Donald Trump's first term. And the president has wavered on that decision despite publicly calling for his firing. At times, he's even floated Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent as a possible replacement and even suggested Powell could be out in 8 months, before later insisting he wouldn't be firing Powell at all.
I think he's doing a bad job, but he's going to be out pretty soon anyway. In eight months, he'll be out. But I call him too late. He's too late all the time. He should have lowered interest rates many times. Europe lowered their rate 10 times. We lowered ours none. And it's causing a problem for people that want to buy a home.
For now, Jerome Powell's term as Fed chair ends in May of next year, but whether he finishes his term or is pushed out early may depend on just how far President Trump is willing to take his public clash with the Fed chief. And just when it seemed the saga between Donald Trump and Elon Musk had reached its end, the feud flares up again with billions of dollars in major government contracts hanging in the balance. Yesterday, President Trump took to Truth Social to deny claims that he planned to wreck Elon Musk companies by pulling federal subsidies. In fact, the president said that he wanted the billionaire's companies to thrive like never before, to which the billionaire replied, rejecting the president's suggestion, saying the subsidies he's talking about simply do not exist. In fact, Musk also claimed that President Trump has already removed or put an expiration date on all sustainable energy support, and that his rocket company SpaceX was not receiving any favorable treatment and was, in fact, already performing on less money. President Trump's post came just a day after the White House Press Secretary Carolyn Leavitt cast doubt over the administration's support for Elon Musk's AI firm XAI.
Does President Trump support federal agencies contracting with Elon Musk's AI company?
I don't think so, no.
Okay, so he would want the DOJ to then cancel the contract with Musk.
I'll talk to him about it, yes.
Now, tensions have also escalated over SpaceX, which have received more than $22 billion in federal contracts since 2008 and remains a critical player in national security and space exploration. And though President Trump now insists he wants Elon Musk companies to succeed, the relationship between the two has rapidly deteriorated in recent months. In fact, in June, the president publicly threatened to cut some of Elon Musk's contracts after the Tesla CEO blasted President Trump's flagship tax and spending bill, formerly known as the One Big Beautiful Bill Act, as a financial disaster that would bankrupt the country. The billionaire's opposition to the legislation marked a turning point in their alliance, and Tesla has already felt the heat. In fact, during a July 23rd earnings call, Musk warned investors that the end of the federal electric vehicle tax credits scheduled for September 30th could cause a few rough quarters ahead. In fact, Tesla's latest financial filing also listed the Big Beautiful Bill in its risk factors section, citing potential impacts on battery costs, consumer demand, and regulatory credit revenue. Meanwhile, the administration has begun reviewing SpaceX's involvement in President Trump's $175 billion Golden Dome missile defense shield. Once considered the front-runner, SpaceX is now reportedly no longer the automatic choice as the White House looks at alternate partners amid the deepening rift. The once close partnership between the two men was rooted in mutual benefit, but after leaving the administration in May to focus on his tech empire, the relationship crumbled very quickly. And now, with political stakes high and federal billions on the line, the former allies are locked in a high-stakes showdown, one that could reshape America's tech, space, and defense future. France has shaken the diplomatic world by announcing it will formally recognize the state of Palestine at the UN General Assembly in September. President Emmanuel Macron called the move an urgent priority to help end the Gaza war and push for a two-state solution. The announcement has drawn praise from Palestinian leaders and global allies, but sparked outrage in Israel and the United States. Critics say France is rewarding terrorism, while supporters say it's a long overdue stand for justice. But will the decision by President Macron change anything on the ground in Gaza, where over 59,000 Palestinians are dead and many are staring at famine? We've got more in our next report.
France will formally recognize the State of Palestine. During the UN General Assembly in September, President Emmanuel Macron announced on Thursday, calling it an urgent priority. Macron said the move aims to end the war in Gaza, deliver aid, and push for a two-state solution.
Together, we understand the necessity of offering a political path. I believe in the future of the two-state solution as the foundation of a regional security architecture that will allow Israel to live in peace and security with its neighbors.
The reaction was swift and fierce. The United States slammed the decision, with Secretary of State Marco Rubio calling it a slap in the face to the victims of October 7th and a gift to Hamas propaganda. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu said the move rewards terror and risks creating another Iranian proxy aimed at Israel's destruction. Israel's ambassador to the UN, Danny Danon, said Macron's decision ignores the reality that Israel has no partner for peace and accused France of rewarding Hamas, which still holds hostages taken on October 7, 2023. The Palestinian side, on the other hand, welcomed the shift. Senior Palestinian Authority's Vice President Hussein al-Sheikh said it showed France's support for self-determination and an independent state. Hamas, though not part of the Palestinian delegation to the UN, also hailed the move as a positive step and urged more countries to follow suit. France now joins 147 of 193 UN member states that recognize or plan to recognize Palestine. Most of the global south, including India, Russia, and nearly all of Africa, have done so since 1988. Sweden led Western Europe in 2014, and recently, Ireland, Spain, Norway, Mexico, and several Caribbean nations have followed. The UK, Malta, and Belgium are reportedly close behind. Now on the ground, the war in Gaza rages on. Nearly 60,000 Palestinians, mostly civilians, have been killed in Israeli strikes, according to the Gaza Health Ministry, and around 50 people are still believed to be in captivity of Hamas. Ceasefire talks have faltered. The U.S. pulled its team from the Doha negotiations, accusing Hamas of bad faith. On the other hand, Hamas said it was committed and surprised by the withdrawal. Meanwhile, Gaza's humanitarian crisis is spiraling. People are starving, hospitals are overwhelmed, and aid efforts are chaotic. Women at one site accused U.S. contractors of using tear gas and pepper spray during food distribution. Now, British Prime Minister Keir Starmer called the famine in Gaza indefensible and plans an emergency call with France and Germany to push for aid and a ceasefire. With Macron's bold move, France becomes one of the most powerful European nations to back Palestinian statehood, deepening global divides and raising the stakes in one of the world's most intractable conflicts.
And now turning to South America, where a major policy shift has occurred from the United States. Venezuela's President Nicolas Maduro has said that the U.S. had authorized petroleum giant Chevron to resume oil production in the Latin American country. The move comes just a few months after the Trump administration moved to cancel the company's license over human rights concerns. During a televised interview on Thursday, Maduro praised the move and welcomed Chevron's return after a sweeping policy reversal in Washington.
Chevron was informed about its licensing concessions to continue operations in Venezuela. They informed Executive Vice President Delcy Rodriguez, who reiterated to Chevron, "As we say to all international firms and companies working in Venezuela, welcome to the work." There are already working groups for Chevron to resume its functions. I congratulate them, it seems very good to me. Chevron has been in Venezuela for 102 years, and I want them to have 100 more years of peaceful work.
And now Chevron has operated in Venezuela for over a century and has been granted a license under former President Joe Biden to produce and export Venezuelan crude. In fact, in a 2022 deal, a deal was reached to ease sanctions in return for the release of detained Americans and a promise by Maduro to allow fair elections. But as Maduro sidelined the opposition, most sanctions were reimposed. And yet the U.S. maintained the concession to Chevron, which single-handedly produces 24% of oil in Venezuela, and that decision was heavily criticized. In fact, in February, President Trump announced he was reversing crooked Joe Biden's concessions to Maduro. He even accused Maduro of failing to honor a migrant return agreement and threatened a 25% tariff on any country buying oil or gas from Venezuela. Washington then gave Chevron 30 days to halt operations, and the company complied and its license expired in May. And several other foreign energy firms also lost their licenses to operate in the country. But reports suggest the policy reversal is a huge win for Chevron, which has lobbied hard to have its license restored. The oil giant reportedly warned the U.S. that without its presence, China and Russia could gain more influence in the region.
The company conducts its business globally in compliance with laws and regulations applicable to its business, as well as the sanctions frameworks provided for by the U.S. government, including in Venezuela.
Besides, the policy shift also brings relief to Venezuela's struggling economy, one that's been largely isolated since Maduro's disputed election last year.
Every investor from the United States who wants to work with serious people of their word on the basis of legality, come to Venezuela. Venezuela is the paradise of investments for oil, gas, petrochemicals, and hydrocarbons. Welcome whenever and however you want.
In fact, the move to ease some restrictions on Venezuela's oil sector comes on the heels of a recent prisoner swap between the two nations, which has helped ease diplomatic tensions. Relations between the two countries have been tense for years, and the Trump administration has publicly supported opposition leaders who say their candidate won last year's election, not Maduro. So while Chevron is back in business, political tensions still linger. Diplomatic relations between Caracas and Washington will also remain frosty. And for now, the future of the deal is anything but certain. And from all of us here at First Post, thank all of you for tuning in, not just today, but every day. We hope you have a great weekend, and we look forward to seeing you right back here next week. Thanks for watching, everyone.